lives are you touching? How many people see Jesus because of your witness in the streets, whether it's out there with your community garden or the coffee or the water? They matter. Everybody matters. So we've got to be telling our story, but first we have to look at ourselves and say, what is the story? Your narrative is shifting. Just in the few months that I've been working with you, I hear it in here. That is powerful. How is that now being translated into the congregations? How are you sharing that?
I really don't think a lot of that is the problem, though. The big problem that we have, and it's a very close thing, we're going to have the co-op picnic coming up in about 3 weeks. And if you're lucky and you're around here and you're invited, which I'm sure you are, you'll see, just like any other picnic or any other place that has it, where you got, it's not family oriented, you'll have Zion meeting Zion, you'll have Hill meeting Hill, and they'll be in different areas, and with how many of them will mingle? This is the problem. How do you get these people together to know each other once?
So someone
Really get them
stands
together.
up, just like that story that we read, and says, get up and walk.
Pick up your mat.
We need to use our discipleship authority and say, and they might not come, but we model that. Because it's comfortable to do what we've always done. So we become the circle of influence that causes change, a small circle of change, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So it starts with us. So, for those that are comfortable, that might be a way to say, hey, look, let's just be really intentional. Or maybe you have, the icebreakers that say you don't eat until you do an icebreaker, and you have them sit, and now you say, now that's where you sit for your meal, because now we're stuck.
My question
It's like you can't go back and sit with your family, but there's ways to ease them into that because now you've broken the ice, literally, and hey, go break bread together now.
My question to you is this: we have a picnic. What will happen between now and next year's picnic? See, it isn't our complete responsibility of getting these people together. Co-op has got to help. That's why it is called co-op. If co-op can come up with more events, combining all 4 churches, eventually you might get, instead of 6, you might get 10. Then you might get 12. Then you might get... But if the co-op doesn't come up with these events, and this is what they're looking at, the things that co-op is putting together, not what St. James or Hill is putting together, because yes, you will get some there, 1 or 2, who they know. Maybe I might know someone at Hill, and they're having a Peach Festival, whatever. I might go out there then. But how many from the others will?
New initiatives with a new name.
So I think it's up to, and once again, I'm looking at co-op because that's the core.
Yeah.
If they can come up with more events throughout the year rather than one, and yes, it's not an easy task, believe me, I know that. These people that are on the committees know it too.
Yeah, but part of
But
what's
it's
going on
changed.
now is that we're doing deep spiritual renewal with this group and starting with this core. And this is really important work. Picnics, they're great fellowship, they're great mingling, they're great getting to want to know one another. But every single month you guys have faithfully been coming in here, entering into the scriptures, literally pouring out your heart with some of these emotions that you're feeling. This is life-changing work that you're doing. So please consider this part of what the co-op is doing.
Paul, in everything you were saying, you said, if they, it's we.
It's, yeah.
If we can do this, it's not we, us and them, it's us.
And I think everybody that has anything going on at their facility has spread the word. It's in your bulletin every Sunday, so-and-so's having this, so-and-so's having that.
And sometimes it works out and sometimes it
Yeah, and
doesn't,
sometimes it doesn't.
Well, I think that, these are the things like providing water, the library. Those are small victories that we could really
Celebrate.
easily make a big deal about.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
Can I add one more? Can I add one more little caveat that we were talking about? Jane and I were talking about because we have the homeless shelter at Salem on the eve of this picnic. How many of you would be willing to pick up some homeless families whose children do not have the privilege of playing in a playground and bring them to the picnic because they haven't been to a playground and spend all day at a playground or at a feast in that kind of situation. We have a homeless population. Now, they may not behave like us, and they won't speak, maybe their accent will be a little different than ours. And their children might be a little bit more energetic than our children. But,
You mean like borrow a bus from Luther Care people and?
well, it was just a random idea. Because again, you put a bunch of people together and we just kind of throw ideas. And Jane Sheaf, who is not here tonight, said, I'm really just tempted to put a sign up and get these children to the playground. And it's like, spoken like a little old ice lady that's been in and out of that place all summer. It's like, those children, when they go to a playground, they generally walk from 9th and Cumberland to Lincoln Avenue and Walnut Street. And that's like a 7-block walk.
That's the only one left?
There is no playgrounds. There is no green space left downtown Lebanon. Downtown Lebanon is nothing more than a macadam parking lot, which the merchants have been screaming that they've needed more parking.
Yeah.
They've gotten them to the point where the only true green space is Salem's property that is free and open. And that was another conversation that I had this week with the YMCA. We've been going around and around, and I'm sorry if I'm monopolizing, but we've been going around and around about skateboarders and the extensive damage they're doing to the property of Salem. Our steps, we have to get so much cement work done out there, it's horrible.
Well, that's because they took their park away.
No, it's the complete opposite. They have a skateboarding park across the street from Salem at the YMCA. And they have a community youth center that is open, and they have after-school programs. What is happening is, and Darren Pickles, I've had an extensive conversation with him, is the kids are warming up their skateboards and warming up what their exercises are going to be over in the park at Salem. Then they go over to the park, and we saw this when we were passing out the water. All the skateboarders going past down H Street. And it's like, what the heck? So as Darren explained, they skateboard in the afternoon. They skateboard down H Street to Turkey Hill. And then after 5, 6 o'clock, they head back up to Salem and polish their routines. He thought it was bad enough in the front. I said, Darren, do you understand? We have handicapped access ramps in the back. And he went, oh no.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
So we have a skate park.
Wow.
And we're having a lot of problem, spoken by someone who's been plagued with the property committee for the past year. But I mean, they're looking proactively. But his solution, one of them, and it was kind of an off-color moment, was at the old Y, before they built this youth center,
Yeah.
they had an old bank. And the police would sit in under this old bank, and they would do their paperwork. And they like 8th and Willow Streets because it is in the center of town that if they need to be dispatched, it takes them next to no time to get there. They lost that because this YMCA bought the property and built this community. So his suggestion is, why doesn't the members of Salem invite the police department to come up on the property or park around the property to do their paperwork, so that they can utilize that central access. And it is, I mean, Salem's easy. You can get to the north side now in no time. You just scoot up and over the bridges and you're one side or the other. It doesn't take long to get across town from 8th and Willow Street. So that's going to be discussed this Sunday at Church Council.
So let's think.
Yeah, where'd you- yeah, go.
What are some other ways that you see gotta work unceasingly? We're gonna come up.
As someone who is on the board, I would encourage people, if they have any judgment towards the co-op, to come to a board meeting.
Yes.
Because we talk. the pastors, I feel like there's this idea that the pastors are just talking down and saying, this is what we're gonna do. That's not the case. And there's so many wonderful things happening. So if we can find a positive every week and share it with someone in our congregation, because clearly word of mouth can be either a blessing or a curse. So just kind of flip it to the positive of things.
And if, you know, I don't know about the library, but the water and the sandwiches, the pastors had nothing to do with.
Yeah,
Right.
that wasn't
Came
their
from you
idea.
folks.
Yeah. Yeah, and what if you started to tell these stories in light of our story? That you see healing going on, that you see new beginnings with an unknown future, but you see God at work through the fact that you got up, you responded, and look at what's going on. When we start to tell our story connected to these stories, that's the power of the scriptures, and especially for others, because they've been telling themselves a different story. They've been telling themselves, I'm fearful, I don't want to change.
And I would just like to say, it's not going to be, you know, as we were saying, it's not the co-op, it's we. But I'm trying to think of an example. Okay, I'm working on my fitness. I have a 10-month-old. It was fun being pregnant, it's not now. And trying to lose the baby weight. Well, if I sit at home and think really hard about losing that baby weight, that's all well and good. But if I get up and do something about it, I'll see a result. I have never been in an experience yet, and I doubt that I ever will be, with these 4 congregations where I've been turned away. So when you show up to something, I have not heard of anyone turned away. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I've never heard of it. But I think if you just sit and fester and wonder, oh, when is this going to happen? When is this going to happen? That's torturing yourself. But if you want to be a change, or you want things to happen, it's not going to happen just by going to church on Sunday and reading the bulletin and saying, oh, no, not this week. You know, it's going to take time, and I don't expect it to be this massive thing. We have to start very small, and if we share those small tidbits, and then it's going to keep growing and growing and growing. Kind of back to what Charlie was talking about with the books. I mean, look how amazing that is, that quick. And if we just keep sharing the positive, that can help shut out the negative. But if, you know, if I sit at home and, you know, stare at my size 12 jeans and go, hey, you look good, you know, and do nothing, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
And so I think it still kind of goes back to looking all the way back to the beginning of where we are in our faith personally.
Right.
Not demographically, not what building, but looking at ourselves and figuring out, okay, what are my spiritual gifts and how can I help? You know, and I think too, we talked in previous sessions about being busy or being afraid of failing, but I work for the state of Pennsylvania. I am a public school teacher, and I can tell you with my whole heart, there is no way to fail at doing God's work. There's
Amen.
not. There's
It's not
not.
about seminary, because I'm just, filling that
So-
out. Just
I
saying.
mean, like, taking the Keystone and, doing CAB the whole time, yeah, you might fail, but doing God's work is, I don't think that there's any way to fail at that. And it doesn't have to be a big picnic, it doesn't have to be giving out sandwiches. It could be something as simple as go for a walk downtown and have a conversation with someone. I had the most awesome time the other night with my son. He's 4.5, and to play soccer, he had to sell subs. Well, all of my family's from Philadelphia. There's no way I was shipping that.
Yeah, right.
So my friend said, well, give it to the homeless. So before I knew it, people, Colleen, you helped everybody, people were sending Elliot money for these subs. And $192.50 later, worth of subs, we just walked 9th Street, and people were just so grateful. They didn't have to cook dinner, or maybe they weren't getting dinner. And it was really that simple. So I think when we think of the co-op, We don't have to think of this big, massive thing, but just
Yeah.
start small bites. And I think we're there. I'm really
Well, that's what I'm hearing.
optimistic. I think we're getting there.
Yeah, and so when you think about letting go, rising, walking, and responding, you're doing that in many different ways. And then you're seeing the fruits of that. But when you do that, you're doing it, I think, I'm hearing, without expectation of what God does on the other side. So another tough question I want to ask, this will be the last tough one for tonight. What are our expectations of God's healing? You know, I challenged our group a little bit with that earlier. Did the lame blind man expect to be healed? Heck no.
No.
He didn't, you know? Do you expect God's healing? And, you know, and what does that look like for this co-op? Do you expect it? And what does it mean to be made well? If you do expect it, but do you expect it? Or do you expect it to be the way?
He went to the pool hoping to be healed, but his healing came in an unexpected way.
Yes, yes,
It wasn't the way he was looking to be healed,
right,
but then suddenly,
exactly,
the grace of God touches him in an unexpected way.
right.
And I think, this is my opinion, the co-op's goal wasn't to be healed, it was to solve money problems and attendance problems. But what's God's goal? Are we to do his work, or are we to fill up the pews and fill up our coffers?
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great point.
And I think that's where the great divide, you can almost see those camps right along those lines. Why are, this co-op's a failure, the money's not coming in, and the pews aren't filling up. Let's go back to the old ways, and you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and even when we talk about healing, in relation to the story, to me, I'm referring more to being made well. And really that's also about being whole. And trusting that you have everything that you need. It doesn't mean that if you have a broken leg, it's not gonna still be broken tomorrow. It doesn't mean if you have asthma, you're not gonna struggle breathing. But your spiritual grounding is knowing that you are well because of the promises of God. So that's the kind of healing that we want to see with the co-op, and it's already going on, is that we understand that we're already okay. We're not failures. Our history has shaped us to this point, but what is our expectation of what that being made well is?
Well, I think projecting happiness actually goes a long way towards getting there. I know that over the past several months that at Zion, I think that in general, we made a conscious effort from the council on down to try and project an attitude of being happy and not dwelling so much on the negative and so on. So, and we've gained a few members and we've had some events, and I think when it comes to the peace offering, I don't know if everybody senses it equally, but I think that it's much more enthusiastic than it used to be. You know, I now make an effort, I try to make sure I shake every hand in the building, and I think that I'm seeing much more of that. People are milling around the entire place instead of just staying, you know, where they are.
Yeah, okay.
Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, that's really powerful. I mean, in that simple act of physically shaking hands with somebody, you've not entered their fields of
I
grace.
mean, I know,
Yeah.
I have felt a lot more positive about the congregation every week.
Yeah. When you start to make a gratitude list, or you start to make a list of where you see God is never stopping, God's always at work, it's hard then to grumble. No one ever loses sleep at night making a gratitude list. No one. If you do it, you know, your DNA won't allow you to do it. You fall asleep much quicker when you start thinking about, you go through your day and you're just giving thanks. If you just go through the day and give thanks for every little thing, you're out. But if you start focusing on the expectations that you had that got missed, you'll be up all night. So it's the same thing. Starting from a place of gratitude is really, it comes from, I mean, the Greek word Eucharist, Eucharisteo, when you conjugate the Greek verb, grace, thanksgiving, and joy. Grace is a starting point. When we are thankful, joy is a response. You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. Eucharisteo, that's why the Eucharist is so important. I won't go preaching about that. But, so yeah, that's the response. And often, you belong before you believe, right? You feel this peace. You feel that connection. You can't really explain it. I don't really know why. Man, the change is in you, dude. You've been coming here, the spiritual renewal is happening in you. You are now happier. You now see everybody in the congregation differently. Yes, and that is, you are now spreading love and creating that sacred atmosphere for others to feel the same thing too. But you can't really articulate it. You can't quantitate it because you can't count it in numbers. But the Spirit is at work. And there's healing. And there's new beginnings, but you don't know where it's going. But you know that on Sunday morning, shaking hands with everyone in there is a moment of intimacy and connection that you didn't feel before. That is spiritual growth. Fantastic. This is how God is always at work. But our expectations might be, we don't have money problems anymore. We don't have to be a part of the co-op.
I can't wait to tell my mother you said that. She'll be-
Yeah! I think she even recorded it. You gave her that. Yeah. But you're now reflecting on God being at work in what can be perceived as the little things. What we do in the small things is what we do in the big things. It starts within. It's so powerful.
And in the story, the presence of God at work creates hostility, resentment among the people of God.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
They don't see it even though they're the people of God.
Right.
And that happens in our congregations.
You're right. And we need to expect that. So it's really important to recognize that this is the pattern of human history. The brokenness, the anger, the hostility, the fear. But what happens when the obstacles get let go and they overcome the fear? On the other side, new beginning with an unknown future. And that's where you're at. So without a doubt. What other ways do you see God at work? Because we're ending on a high note.
We haven't quit. I mean, we're here.
Yes! Unceasing, yeah.
Like, I mean,
Yeah,
there are times, you know, where I admit I feel like, oh my gosh, there's so much work to be done,
And the Olympics are on tonight.
but we're still, you know, we're still here.
You get gold medals for everybody.
yeah. So we can make these meetings less than 2 hours if you all show up with the gratitude list and where God's at work, if you each have a dozen things. We'll be done. Because then if you could teach your congregation members to do that as well, all of you, you won't need ongoing conversations about hostility because you know how to deal with it. Because not that hostility won't be there, but it's that it's also there with the gratitude list. As to where I saw God at work in the whole. Any other ways that you see God at work? 3 more and I'll let you go. Or twice this week. We hear it in you. You know, just hearing, you know, stepping outside and hearing the banter, hearing the laughter. The fact that you are having this conversation, God is so clearly at work. I would not hesitate to come back here over and over